everyone. My name is LaurenWhetstone, and my project is titled The Future of the Southwest Light Rail Transit Project, Predicting Crime with Spatial Analysis. This slide talks about how the University of Arizona is on the land and territories of indigenous peoples, and that Arizona is home to 22 federally recognized tribes. I'd like to start off introducing my study by talking about Metro Transit, which is one of the country's largest transit systems, and it's located in the Twin Cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul, Minnesota. The Metro Transit system includes light rail, buses, and commuter trains, and operates through the Twin Cities metro area. Metro Transit operates two light rail lines, Metro Blue and Green, and the blue line runs through Minneapolis. The green line runs through both Minneapolis and St. Paul. I've provided a Metro Transit map of the light rail lines and bus rapid transit lines, and I also provided a picture of what a light rail car looks like. Next, I wanted to talk about the SWLRT, also known as the Southwest Greenlight Rail Transit Extension Project. And this project extends the Green Line by 14.5 miles from Minneapolis out to Eden Prairie and includes 16 new stations. As you can see on the map, 5 of these stations are located in Minneapolis in the top right-hand corner of the map. The project broke ground back in 2018, and the anticipated opening of the line will happen in 2027. Currently, the project is in the structure and station construction and track installation phase. During the planning process for the extension, residents raised different types of concerns, including the burden of the cost of the project that would have on the state and local agencies, along with taxpayers. Another concern raised would be that the new line would attract more crime to the area. There have been studies conducted on whether the creation of new light rail stations increase crime in multiple cities around the United States. Some of these studies said that they found that property crimes decreased once the station locations were announced and remained stable after operation, and that the light rail impedes crime, and that the decrease in crime can actually be attributed to the gentrifying of neighborhoods and the extension into less dense areas. The study question that I wanted to answer when it came to my research project is, will the 5 new light rail stations in Minneapolis have as much crime as the light rail stations in downtown Minneapolis and St. Paul? I think that this can address some concerns that people might have with these new light rail stations. And it's just interesting to see how much more crime is in downtown compared to the neighborhoods outside of downtown. So the study area that I chose for my project is the Twin Cities of St. Paul and Minneapolis, Minnesota. They're located in central Minnesota, and Minneapolis is the largest city in Minnesota with a population of approximately 425,000 people. And St. Paul is the capital of Minnesota and has the second large population of people with nearly 304,000. Minneapolis spans about 54 square miles and St. Paul is 52 square miles. I think that the nickname of the Twin Cities is an appropriate nickname for the pair because they're comparable in both size and populations. And then this map shows the blue line, green line, Minneapolis and St. Paul boundaries, principal arterials and other roads, along with lakes, rivers, and the neighborhood boundaries. The next map shows the crime data for both St. Paul and Minneapolis that I used in the study. For Minneapolis, the data set includes under 300,000 points of crime data from all the way back to 1922 to present day. And St. Paul has around 500,000 records of crimes from August 2014 until the present. But for my project, I only decided to use crimes for the years 2019 through 2023. This map shows the blue line, green line, and the light rail stations along each line for only Minneapolis and St. Paul. And I also included the 5 new light rail stations as points in the green. So going into the different analysis methods I used for my project, I first use the kernel density geoprocessing tool to find out how many crimes per square miles are within the Twin Cities and to see where crime generally happens. The next method I used was a buffer analysis, and I created a buffer around each station of about a quarter of a mile. And I chose this distance because it's a relatively close walking distance for commuters and light rail users. And I think I used both the light rail stations and newly created light rail stations layers and merged them together, and then used the buffer tool to create that quarter-mile buffer around each station. And then I merged them together, added a spatial join with a buffer layer to result in the number of crimes per buffer to see which stations had the highest amount of crimes. And then the next method I used was a neighborhood population density analysis. And this is important because it helps determine the number of future crimes at the next light rail stations by showing the population density for each neighborhood along these light rail lines and using these numbers to predict the amount of crimes based on population density of the neighborhoods at the new stations. So I took the neighborhood boundary layer, joined the name and population data and merged them together. Then I also added fields for population density, such as square miles as well. And then the next, when it came to the results for the kernel density, this map shows that the crimes per square mile for 2019 through 2023, the Minneapolis crimes for this time period included the highest crime category, which is around 65,500 to 81,900 crimes per square mile. And this area is symbolized by the dark fuchsia color and located generally in the downtown portions of Minneapolis. But there's also a section of northern Minneapolis that includes these crimes as well. And you can see in the surrounding areas that there are crimes. And the lowest category of 0 to 16,400 is generally surrounding the outer portions of the city. Next, the results for St. Paul kernel density analysis is that the highest category of crimes was between 141,600 and 177,000, and it's symbolized in this dark green. And it's located in downtown St. Paul, but there are also pockets of crime along the green line and then north of St. Paul downtown. But mostly you can see that it's lower crime around the rest of the city. Next, we have the results of the buffer density analysis. The light rail stations with the highest crimes within a quarter of a mile are located in both downtown Minneapolis and St. Paul. And then St. Paul has the two highest amount of crimes, Central Station and Union Depot, which is symbolized with the largest circle, and that's about 7,500 to 13,600 crimes. And you can see the smallest category of crimes between 6 and 1,500 is at those 5 newest stations. And then also at the stations furthest out from downtown on the blue line. There's also some sections along the green line just on the border of Minneapolis and St. Paul that have the same amount of crimes. And then when it comes to results for the neighborhood population density analysis, the map shows that the neighborhoods with the highest population density between 12,500 and 17,900 people are located near downtown Minneapolis, such as Elliott Park, Ventura Village, and Cedar Riverside. St. Paul's highest density neighborhood is Summit University with about 9,000 to 12,500 people per square mile. And I just chose to show the neighborhoods along the green and blue lines. So when it comes to the conclusion for the kernel density analysis, the map shows that the highest concentration of crimes happens in downtown for both Minneapolis and St. Paul, and that there are also concentration of crimes in North Minneapolis and south of downtown that do not occur along these light rail lines. And then St. Paul also has some pockets of crime north of downtown that do not occur along the green light rail line. These results show that crime and light rail are not necessarily related, as there are high concentrations of crimes in other parts of each city that are not along these light rail lines. The buffer analysis results show that the light rail stations with the most crimes are located in both downtown Minneapolis and St. Paul. And the light rail stations with the least number of crimes are located in the southernmost stations of the Blue Line in Minneapolis and just west of downtown Minneapolis near University of Minnesota. As you can see in the table, the ones with the asterisks are these new stations that haven't been created yet, and they're generally the lowest. So these results confirm that there are higher amounts of crimes in downtown areas compared to areas further from downtown. The neighborhood population density analysis results show that the densest neighborhoods with the light rail stations are closest to downtown in both cities. And the results demonstrate that light rail stations with the highest crimes are not in the densest neighborhoods, but in the second and third highest category of neighborhood densities. And this shows that there is a correlation between neighborhood density and light rail station crimes, but I think further research would need to be done to see how strong of a relationship there is between the two variables. And then for the conclusion of the neighborhood population density analysis, I chose the following stations on the right-hand side of the screen because their neighborhood densities were closest to the neighborhood densities of these new light rail stations on the left portion of the table. And you can, as you see results for the crimes for the predicted stations, they are higher than the existing ones because it is assumed that the land is currently undeveloped with buildings and does not include pedestrian walkways before construction. And they're generally located on like existing train tracks. So comparing the predicted crime counts of these stations to the stations in both downtown Minneapolis and St. Paul, the new stations will have considerably less crime due to lower density neighborhoods, their distance from downtown, and their lower number of past crimes. And then I think in order to enhance this project or study, some future research suggestions could include expanding the study area by including the rest of the light rail stations on the new Green Line outside of St. Paul and Minneapolis and the surrounding municipalities to see if there are different crime patterns in the suburbs compared to the cities. And then another way would be to create a more in-depth analysis would include other socioeconomic demographics such as income and poverty to see if there would be more accurate crime counts for the future SWLRT stations. And that's all I had.